welcome, Davin.
Thank you.
So great having you here.
Thanks for having me.
Richard, always a pleasure having you here, and Corey behind the camera. Appreciate you being here. Yeah, so super excited to have some tea, and I guess we can get into the kind of tea that we're having, and maybe talk a little bit about tea in general. I don't know, have you had much Chinese tea?
No, but we do have, and I was waiting before we started recording, but we do have a mutual friend, possibly, David Ramos.
David, yes, David.
I was just over at his house. Yesterday we had a barbecue in the backyard, and we've been friends for a long time. I've always known he's been into tea.
Yep.
He started to introduce it to me a few years back, but me being the person that I am with like ritual, I want to do everything right. He sent me a tea kit and some cups and all the things and some tea, and I just haven't, again, I wanted to give it respect because I know what it's about, and I just haven't done it yet. So
cool.
to actually be able to do it with what in his terms his tea guru is pretty awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, David's great.
Yeah.
He loves tea. He definitely loves tea. Cool. Well, I think there's a lot of similarity between tea and whiskey, and this is something that obviously these guys know. I've talked about this at length, but some of the things that people really like about whiskey, like the craft, the culture, the tradition, the ritual, and this kind of the complexity of the whiskey itself or the tea itself. There's a lot of crossover there, and I like to do Pu-erh with whiskey people because it is an aged tea, and it gets better with age and improves with age, and so there's a lot of similarity with whiskey, and it's very recognizable.
Absolutely.
People. And the profile is also going to be really dark. I'll pass this around. It's not going to have a lot of smell in its dry, cold form like this, but then I'll go ahead and warm it up and give it a rinse, and you can smell it.
Okay.
And this practice that I'm doing, this is Gong Fu Cha, and this is the part that you're talking about with the little tea wares and everything. And the good news is there's no one right way to do it. So even if you do it and you don't know what you're doing, the worst thing that you can do is just be bad at it. But no one's gonna be offended. You're not hurting anyone's ancestors' feelings. So, that's the great thing about tea, is that it is this very informal cultural thing. I think people want to be respectful in the West, and they see it like, oh, that looks really fancy. I better be like tiptoe around it. But China is so big and so old and diverse. There's so many different ways of doing things, and you could have someone say this is the right way, and any other way is absolutely wrong, and that's fine. They can say that, but they have no authority. There's no tea pope. So, and actually, it was interesting because I was talking to Corey today, and he was talking to me about whiskey, and maybe I get some clarity from this from you. I was like, whiskey, I guess it has to be aged in oak barrels to be whiskey. Is that true? Like, what makes whiskey whiskey?
So what makes whiskey whiskey is just the fact that it's distilled from grain. But there is white whiskey out there that has never touched a barrel. There is light whiskey that has a little bit of barrel characteristic and a distillation style. But yeah, what makes whiskey literally is defined as being distilled from grain.
So moonshine's whiskey.
As long as it's made from grain. Some moonshines can be made from moonshine. We're going to get in a whole other...
Here we go.
Yeah, you stepped in it now. Moonshine, all moonshine means is that it's illegal. It's distilled illegally and sold illegally. But moonshine can be made from anything. Yeah.
Okay, so what if I make moonshine in a still, but then I get a license and I'm legal? What is it called now?
Well, it depends on what you made it from. So if you made it from sugar, it's now called brandy.
Got it.
If you made it from a fruit, then it's called brandy. And if you distilled it from corn or barley, it's called whiskey.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
and it doesn't have to go in a barrel. It can just be.
It does not necessarily need to go into a barrel. Yeah, that's right. There are different declinations for different styles of whiskey. So everybody thinks bourbon. This is the easy one to kind of explain. Everybody thinks bourbon has to be made and aged in Kentucky. When in actuality, the only thing bourbon needs to be is 51% or more corn, and that's about it. Richard, does it even have to touch wood? There's no white bourbon.
Yeah.
It does have to touch wood.
Bourbon has to touch wood, but if you've got a brand new oak barrel to make it bourbon and it just touched it, barrel is literally used oak now.
And you can't make bourbon in it.
And then you can't make bourbon in it anymore.
And to make a Kentucky bourbon, this is where it starts to get a little strange. To make a Kentucky bourbon, it does have to be made in Kentucky.
Sure,
and it
fair.
does have to be aged for, I think, 2 years.
It's 2 years.
It's a minimum 2 years. For it to have that declination of Kentucky bourbon.
Yeah.
But bourbon in general just has to have had touched new charred white oak. So yeah, it does have to have touched wood. But
moonshiners can actually cheat by adding sugar into their grains.
And whiskey, you can't do that.
And with whiskey,
and that's another fermentable is sugar, right? And so they're going to add a higher proof by doing that.
Right, and also it will ensure their fermentation happens because grains can be a little fussy about the temperature and the time of the year and how hot or cold it is outside.
Gotcha. Okay, well, to analogize, tea has to be from the tea plant. So kind of like whiskey having to be made from grains.
Yep.
Tea has to be made from the tea plant. And I'll give that a smell now that I've rinsed it. That should be a lot more pronounced. It's got to be from the tea plant, number one. That's pretty straightforward.
Beautiful.
It's a plant called Camellia sinensis, and some closely related plants that also qualify as tea. The line between species is much more blurry than we like to think that it is. And the type of tea that we're drinking is, we call it Pu-erh tea. I guess that's like saying Kentucky bourbon, or Kentucky, or like Scotch whiskey, for example. It's got a region associated with it. It's from Yunnan. Pu-erh comes from Yunnan. If you were to make tea the exact same way with the exact same lineages of plants, but make it up here, you can't call it Pu-erh. It's got to be from Yunnan to be Pu-erh. But Pu-erh is not a type of tea, so this is where we're kind of getting away from whiskey a little bit, where, and I guess it may be more like wine. You've got white wine and red wine, and that's got to do with the grapes, but also to do with the process.
Right.
There's 6 different categories of tea, and Pu-erh is not a category of tea, right? It's a regional designation. So saying that, referring to Pu-erh is like referring to champagne, or Scotch or Kentucky bourbon. It's got that regional aspect of it, but it's like champagne insofar that it's so well known that if you say Pu-erh, everyone knows you're talking about. And you'll go to a tea shop, and you won't go to you have a green tea section and a heicha section for all the fermented teas, and Pu-erh gets its own section, just like at the wine store. Champagne gets its own section.
Sure.
You don't go looking for it in the white wine section, even though it's a type of white wine.
Right.
So Pu-erh it's like a pseudo category. It's not truly a diagnostic category of tea. There's 6 types of tea, and they're green tea, yellow tea, oolong tea, red tea, white tea, heicha, and wait, I skipped one. Green, yellow, oolong, red, white, and heicha. That's 6.
Okay.
Yeah, this is my job. So
Yeah. Doing good. You're doing good.
It's literally my whole thing I do all day long. So I better get this right on the camera. But yeah, there's the 6 types, and Pu-erh kind of straddles 2 of those types.
Okay.
Because you've got Sheng Pu-erh, which is the unfermented Pu-erh, and that's technically a green tea. No one thinks of it as green tea, though. If someone says, let's drink a green tea, they are not talking about Sheng Pu-erh. Okay. Just like if someone says, let's drink white wine, they're not talking about champagne. Or if someone says sparkling wine, they're also not talking about champagne.
Right.
If you meant champagne, you just say champagne.
You have to say it, yeah.
So, and then fermented Pu-erh, like we're drinking, is technically a type of heicha. There's other fermented teas all throughout China. They can't be called Pu-erh because they're not from Yunnan. And then getting very specific, there's different fermentation styles. And so you've got the classic, like industrial scale fermentation called wodui, wet piling, where you pile the leaves up, you wet them down, you turn them like compost. And that's how and keep doing that for about 40 days. And that's how you ferment the tea leaves. You get this dark, black, earthy tea. And then you've got xiaoduizi, which is when you're a small farmer, you don't have tons of tea to ferment. You're using a much smaller batch. You have to adjust all of the different factors because everything works differently at a smaller scale.
Sure.
So they modify that. It's a little bit more artisan. They call it xiaoduizi, and that's kind of you, the tea master, kajiggering what you're doing to get it to work.
Okay.
Right. That's not necessarily a specific technique. It's just you modifying the wodui process for a small batch. And the goal of these fermentation processes, and I'll let you smell it again now that it's been really woken up, and I can go ahead and show you guys the color.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
On this one, you got this like gorgeous amber color. Some Pu-erhs got like soy sauce, soy sauce
dark.
This isn't one of those. This fermentation style, you don't get quite as much darkness right off the bat, although you will as it ages. But This is an extremely small, very novel, hyper artisan micro fermentation style called Yuan Sheng Tuo that Li Shulin, the guy who makes this tea, he developed this.
Okay.
He's been fermenting tea for like 40 years. He worked at the.
So this is something that can be changed. It's not a traditional. You have to stick to tradition. You can actually
innovate,
make things and innovate.
Absolutely.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're doing it. And there's as little official designations as there apparently are in whiskey and rum.
Right.
Apparently, rum can just be whatever.
You can add
in the US,
you can add several different things to it, right? You can innovate,
and you don't have to put an ingredients list on it. I have to put an ingredients list on tea. That's one ingredient. Fireball doesn't have to put an ingredients list. I don't know what that's about.
Should.
That's its whole own. I know. What the hell is in it? Is there actually cinnamon in it, or is there just like red 40? Is there actually whiskey in it?
Yeah.
Right.
Depending on where you bought it, if it was a gas station,
right. Discussion. Apparently,
Is it actually whiskey? Is actually, or is it
got
malt?
allergies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know why alcoholic beverages freaking like Four Loko doesn't have ingredients.
Well, they did catch them, and they put those guys down too. They figured that out. But again, that was something that was apparent, and that should have been held at a standard and set the standard for everybody else. Like, oh, we really messed up by not, telling people what's in this. We shouldn't let that happen. But it still goes on.
I know.
Still goes on.
Well, cheers to Four Loko.
Cheers.
And we're gonna smell first, and then give it a slurp.
Oh.
And then after you swallow, exhale through your nose and get that fragrance of the tea on your breath. Then the difference between a bottle of whiskey and a pot of tea is that bottle of whiskey is going to be pretty much the same all the way from the top to the bottom.
Yeah.
But a pot of tea, every time you steep it, we're going to steep this probably 8, 9, 10 times.
Oh, wow.
Every time you steep it, it's going to be a little bit different.
Right.
And that's kind of this unique thing about tea is that you don't get all of the juice out of a pot of tea in one go because the leaves have to open up gradually and unfurl. And the more open and unfurled they are, the more of their juice that they are going to go into solution. And so you can't just get the one steeping of the tea. You have to go through this multiple steeping process. And the tea will, by its nature, evolve and change over the course of that. So this Yuan Sheng Tuo, Li Shulin developed this on his own. He innovated, like you're saying.
Okay.
And the reason that he did that, his motivation was, until 1972, all Pu-erh was unfermented. It would just be like green Pu-erh, what we call Sheng Pu-erh. So what they translate it as raw Pu-erh. It is cooked, but they call it raw Pu-erh because it's not fermented. It's like a green tea. And that would naturally ferment over like 20, 30 years and get dark and earthy. And it was part of this trade. They would trade tea for horses. Cakes of tea, big round cakes of tea. They trade these cakes of tea for horses, and they would ferment on the road to Tibet, from Yunnan, where we were looking at, all the way up to Tibet, and they would just ferment on the 6-month journey there. And the people drinking them, they would, what the farmers are sending this green tea off, the people on the receiving end are trading horses for this dark, earthy tea, and they like that taste. And they observe, the exchange rate is 84 cakes of tea for a horse. That's the traditional exchange rate, because you got one being as a cake, 7 cakes as a tong, 12 tongs as a jian. That's 84 cakes. That's worth a horse. And so you've got 84 cakes of tea. You're not going to drink them all right away. It's going to take you some time.
Sure.
And you're also going to break them up, and you continue to use them as currency with your community. I'll trade you this cake of tea for some salt. I'll trade you 5 cakes of tea for this goat, whatever. You know what I mean? They work it out between themselves. And they observed the older these cakes get, the better they get. And so you have people who appreciate this aged, fermented, dark, earthy taste like this tea. And then you got the people making it who, they don't like that at all. They like to drink it green. They drink it fresh.
Yeah.
So there's this disconnect between the producers and the consumers. And when that disconnect gets bridged in the 70s, when you get especially like wealthy Hong Kong people can start going to mainland China for the first time, since the war.
Right.
Now they can go to mainland China and they love drinking this dark, earthy, fermented tea because that's what you drink at dim sum.
Right.
So they're on the buying end. They like earthy, aged, fermented tea. And then they're like, oh, woohoo, let's go to Yunnan, buy up all this old tea, go back and make a killing, selling it back in Hong Kong, Malaysia, places like that.
Right.
They go to Yunnan, and the farmers there are like, oh, you want grandpa's stinky old tea? Sure.
Right.
Here you go. Here's like, give me 10 cents. Here's a 50-year-old cake of tea.
Right.
Because they don't necessarily like that fermented taste.
Right.
They use it as medicine. But they're like, well, we're still growing.
So they hang on to it for its medical benefits.
Right.
They're actually processing it. They're aging it for something else, but it's more of a bitter medicine.
Exactly. And then they're like, well, they want to drink just tea to drink tea. They'll just pick some tea and they've got fresh tea like ready to go. Boom.
Right.
That's what they like. And so there was this bubble that was created because all these people bought all of this old Pu-erh, and all of a sudden there was no old Pu-erh on the market. And the producer was like, oh crap, I guess we should have been hanging on to our old Pu-erh and marking it up, but we didn't know.
We were giving it away.
Right, we were giving it away. And so now you've got people buying up fresh tea just to sit on it, wait, resell it later.
Right.
And so all of a sudden the demand for Pu-erh way outstrips the actual consumption of it. And you get this like economic bubble forming where Pu-erh is all of a sudden skyrocketing in price. And so what the Pu-erh factories did was they're like, we should figure out a way to make fresh Pu-erh taste like aged Pu-erh to meet this demand for aged tea. And so they developed this fermentation technique, the Wodui technique, in either 1972 or 1973. Nobody can agree. Even though it wasn't that long ago.
Right.
People were alive then. But no one can agree when it was.
1 year is a big difference.
Or who did it.
Right.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of different factories all lay claim to that technique. I believe that my throw my hat in with the Munghai factory because they've got the oldest recipe. But anyways, so you get people using this large scale, starts off as an industrial process, was never an artisan process, was always an industrial process to be done with metric tons of tea at a time. And then in the late 90s, early 2000s, you start to see, back then all tea was made by these government-owned factories, and that's who made tea, was just these government-owned factories. Farmers would be growing it, and maybe they'd be processing and drinking it themselves, but mostly they're selling it to the factories processing it, consolidating it, blending it, packaging it, etc. Wow. So in the late 20th century, you start to see individual farmers going into business for themselves for the first time since Imperial China. And or since the Republican era of China,
Sure.
after the revolution. And so you've got people now trying to make fermented tea. They've never done it before. They made green tea and then it would get aged, and now they're trying to meet the market demand for this fermented tea. So they have to develop new ways of fermenting tea. Li Shulin, who makes this tea, he grew up in Yunnan. His parents were tea farmers, and his dad was actually a well-known tea master who processed tea. And he was around, when this technique was invented. They actually borrowed it from other regions of China that used a similar technique for their fermented teas, but they adapted it for Pu-erh in the 70s. And so he grew up drinking this aged, 100-year-old tea, right? That is medicine. When he had a stomach ache or something, his parents would give him this old tea. He doesn't think that the advanced fermented, artificially fermented Pu-erh, Shu Pu-erh, that goes through this Wodui process. Shang is the green one, Shu is the dark one. He likes Shu Pu-erh, he makes it, he likes it, but he doesn't think it tastes like old Shang Pu-erh. He thinks they're two different things. And so he set out to create a style of fermentation that would preserve the nuances of the fresh tea, because what he thinks is not that he is missing from this advanced fermented Shu Pu-erh, that's missing in naturally aged, mature Shang Pu-erh, is that it becomes dark and earthy, but you just get this generalized earthy taste, and it kind of bulldozes all of the nuances of the fresh tea, all the complexity.
Sure.
And so his rationale, he spent about 5 years doing R&D experimenting to develop this technique. And his conclusion was that a naturally fermented Shang Pu-erh would not be turned the way that Shu Pu-erh is. Remember I said they turn it like compost.
Yeah.
Well, a cake of tea on a horse's back or a donkey's back or whatever, traveling 6 months to Tibet, nobody is taking the leaves that are pressed together and turning them with respect to each other. That's not part of what's happening to that tea. And so he's like, well, let me try to age the tea without turning it. And the reason they turn it in the first place, because it homogenizes it.
Sure.
Because you got the outside of the pile, which is breaking down with oxygen, and then the inside is fermenting. And it's like composting is a good way to think about it. And then you've got the outside of the pile and the inside of the pile, and you need to blend them to get an even level of fermentation. And also it helps you control the moisture. You don't control the ambient humidity, and you don't control the inherent moisture of the plant, but you do need to be able to control the moisture of the pile, because if it's too wet or too dry, it'll either mold or it'll die.
Sure.
And so being able to turn that pile and open it up and dry it out is an important technique for a tea master to be able to do. Without being able to do that, he has to control it by shrinking the batch way down to like 10 kilos so that it can dry and be moistened quickly. And he doesn't have to worry about tons and tons of tea being able to change humidity quickly. And then he cover it and uncover it with a tarp to control the moisture. And he's up there 5 times a day, sticking his hand in his palm leaves, smelling it, tasting it, seeing it should be steaming, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He pulls his hand out, making sure it's hot in all the right spots and etc. And trying to it's like trying to break a train, right? And break it right into the station. It's a very delicate process where you try to change something and you have to really plan ahead. And so he developed this technique. That's Yuan Sheng Tuo. That's what we're drinking. And this is this newest batch that we just got from him. We named this witch's butter, which is a type of mushroom.
Okay.
So that sounds a lot like barrel management.
It's exactly what am thinking. And also the idea of expediting aging, right? It's a new controversial thing that's come about, is utilizing electricity and sound and all these things to help pull flavor out of the barrels, out of the wood faster, because we had a very similar thing where bourbon became all of a sudden very popular. When you're talking about something that takes, like you said, 30 years to make with tea, it's a little less extreme, but it's, at least 4 years to 8 years with Kentucky bourbon that the bourbon industry did not foresee coming. Nobody could ever foresee this huge popularity in whiskey drinkers. And so next thing you know, there is not much left. And so they had to figure out a way to up their
increase production.
Prices of bourbons go up. Some companies, I guess I can say, Maker's Mark made a mistake a big mistake of actually proofing it down more. Is that what it was?
They were saying that maybe if there's not going to be enough supply, bringing the proof down a little bit would end up creating a larger supply, and their clientele, their customer base said, no, don't do that. We want it at the proof that it's at. So there was a controversy because they were going to essentially water it down, as you're saying, to increase
the amount so that they could catch up on the time.
Right.
Nobody was happy with that. That was a terrible thing to even come out of somebody's lips, right?
And the whole industry was practically dead. Nobody was drinking their grandfather's whiskey. All of these whiskeys that everybody's hunting for now, that the reason they're unavailable is because that stock is gone and they're trying to catch up with the market over the years. The people who are like your Chinese, the Hong Kong millionaires coming to China, they're buying up the things that are most talked about on the internet.
And price is not not a limit, right? And so that's where your prices start to skyrocket completely out of control.
And a disreputable person will then take and, I got this stuff that's, worth 2 to 3 times as much on the secondary market. Well, let's put that back in the manager's office and I'll make a deal with somebody who wants to give me a little bit of cheddar or a vacation or...
That sounds about right. That makes sense. It's when you can't make something old.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You can make something new and you can wait.
And and like I was saying before, there are some companies out there that are utilizing technology to go ahead and fast age things, and honestly, like they taste pretty similar. They're pretty much dead on. Unless you have like a trained palate, the master who knows what this tea, it just levels off to a certain. It's missing something.
Right.
There's something missing. I can't place it, but there's definitely the complexity of X is not there anymore, and I know why. And it's just simply because you're trying to expedite something that you cannot replicate through technology. It has to be done through age. It has to sit in this place for this long for it to achieve those flavors.
Yeah, it sounds like the real problem is that some people have way too much purchasing power and most people have way too little.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
That's a real different problem than just aging whiskey, isn't it? That's a few steps back
to it.
Funny how that works. I'd actually be interested to see some of this electric aged whiskey, and you know, I don't have an especially trained palate, but I do really love whiskey. I was telling Corey this. I only drink when I'm doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
I just don't have the opportunity. My wife doesn't drink at all.
Sure.
Anything, and then you know, I'm drinking tea all day long. And this is the only time we ever drink alcohol in this space is when we're doing this stuff.
Right.
And so like, I don't really have any opportunity or cause to enjoy whiskey in my life, or really many people to enjoy it with. So I really love the opportunity to get to meet people like y'all and work with you guys and get the opportunity to try like really nice whiskey that I get a story. It's not just like a bottle of something behind a bar or whatever. Like I get to meet the people who make it, and I get to meet people who are really passionate about it and get to hear the whole story, because that's so much more of a rich experience. At the end of the day, you know, people ask me this about tea all the time. People will be like, what's your favorite tea? And I'll be like, oh, it's this tea. What makes it your favorite? And I'll say, it's because I like it the best. And, you know, there's the idea that there is some kind of inherent value to any given thing is you know, that's kind of the market wants you to believe that, but there's not true. You can have a cheap bottle of whiskey that you have the night of your life enjoying that with people that you love, or you could have like a $50,000 bottle of whiskey that you're sitting there trying to sap the enjoyment out of it, and you're so concerned with whether you're getting your money's worth or not that you don't actually have a good time.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, if someone can zap a barrel of whiskey and make it taste good and people get pleasure out of that, then God bless it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing too, is when it comes down to it, it is the space that you're in when you're drinking the whiskey, right? What were you doing? Because whiskey to me makes an imprint just the same way tea does. Certain flavors in general, cookies, pies, cakes.
Yeah.
Smoking tobacco, right?
Absolutely.
These all make imprints on your mind, and so whiskey is one of those that, to me, transcends you to those special places in your past. And so, depending on what kind of whiskey, whether it's, you know, a cheap plastic bottle, that will always remind me of, say, my grandmother. That's what she used to drink, or this smell in her house was indicative of what smell is in this $8 bottle of whiskey, and I can't get enough of it, right? And that's very much one of the reasons why I enjoy whiskey, and in settings like this where people can talk about it, and you know, where does it take you?
The way you talk about the farmers in Hunan and, you know, their processes is the same way I like to talk about the distillers, the distilleries, the people making it. Those are the connections that I find with the spirit that's there, the local grains, trying to work with local farmers, you know, the commodities that you're using, why you're using them. One distillery I went to, they said, yes, these two grains we like to use locally because they are superior, but these two other grains, we prefer to get those from other places because they make them better.
Yeah.
When it gets, and the people in the industry that I've dealt with, most of them are very humble and honest about what it is that they're doing.
Yep.
It's like, no, I don't like that. They're able to say that. A lot of times when you're crafting and creating things, it's very easy to go, no, I spent so much time on this, I want it to be good. And you can end up putting your ego in front of the product. Most of the people that I've worked with, the ego's not there.
Same with tea. You know, the real, I'm not a tea master. I'm just a tea server, right? A tea master is the person who processes the tea, just like a whiskey master.
Right, the master distiller.
Master distiller, exactly. They're the person with the skill to make the thing. You know, the ones who produce good tea are super down to earth. They're super humble. They're not snobs. They are just knowledgeable and passionate and dedicated to what they do, but they're absolutely down to earth. If you show up and you're sitting with them, you don't know anything about tea, they don't care. They're not going to make you feel bad about it. They're just happy to be able to share, you know, what they do with something. What you were talking about earlier, that X factor, right? It's okay, well, there's the alcohol in the whiskey, but then this reminds me of my grandma. And that aspect, there's a word for that in Chinese for tea, that kind of ineffable quality that has an emotional, psychological, spiritual impact on you. It's called the qi of the tea, qi. And so that means the breath, you know. But we know the word qi in American English now, you know. We talk
I was going to say, it's going to be easy to remember. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Chinese medicine, Chinese martial arts, we talk about qi. But the qi of tea, the thing about tea is that that's all that tea has.
Okay.
It's not a strong tasting thing. Even a really dark, thick tea like this, it doesn't have sour, it doesn't have sweet, it doesn't have salty, it doesn't have spicy, it doesn't have oily. It just has a little bit of bitterness. It's got its smell. It's not a super, super strong smell. It's not as strong as coffee. It's not as strong as whiskey. It's much more subtle. All that there really is to it, and there's not ingredients, there's 2 ingredients. There's the 1 leaf and there's water, right?
Okay.
So there's not a lot of levers that you can push in producing the thing, and there's not a lot of levers you push in making it. I'm modifying the time, the temperature, the dosage, my technique, pouring the water.
Right.
But it's all very singular. And so why do we do this? What do we get out of it? It's all that field that gets generated by the experience of consuming it. That this reminds me of my grandma. This is making me feel good. This is making me have a good time. That's all that there really is to tea. That's like the whole point. And that's kind of one of the big differences in Chinese tea culture versus, when you're talking about whiskey culture insofar as like a sommelier type, tasting, focusing on the taste and the smells. Same with a wine sommelier, coffee, etc. They'll talk about the taste and the smell and the craft and the provenance are all topics of discussion. Rarely, you don't hear a sommelier talking about how a given wine makes them feel.
Yeah.
They don't even swallow it. They're tasting it, spitting it out, and talking about the bouquet.
Yes.
But if wine didn't make you feel the way it makes you feel, nobody would care about it. And you wouldn't have sommeliers to begin with. And so it's interesting because in a lot of these Western food cultures, we see this strong emphasis on the sensual experience and kind of discounting this other part, the qi, the holistic experience.
Yeah.
And tea focuses on that. And I actually find that the whiskey community, maybe not industry professionals in a magazine, but the whiskey community definitely appreciates that ineffable aspect. You can have 2 whiskeys with the same ABV giving you completely different experiences.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it is something that selfishly you like to evoke in people that you're meeting with. Whenever I have people come over, neighbors come over and try some whiskeys, one that I can think of is, he's not a big whiskey drinker. It's like, okay, let me introduce you to this in a proper way. What do you like? What don't you like? Food, your personality. I'm going to find the right whiskey for you. Again, selfishly, it's you really want them to enjoy the experience and build on this because what it can do. Right. And so his basically diverged that he, Irish whiskey. Immediately it was almost like a tear coming down, and I didn't have to load it or anything, but he just automatically like, this reminds me of my grandmother's, that's why it's always a grandmother thing, but like this reminds me, I have not smelled this, like whatever's in this in years.
Right.
And again, selfishly, it's like, yes, okay. Yeah. Now let's build on that. And then we kind of moved over into some other things because now his mind is open to the flavors and where else could this take him?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that sounds like that was a moving experience for him. That might have changed his whole life. For real.
Yeah.
For real.
And that's that part of that whiskey community.
Right.
Once you do it, it's a drug and you want to bring people in and stop shooting it. Stop doing shots of whiskey. Right. I don't know when the last time I did a shot of whiskey. There's so much more to it than that. And again, it's the ritual, it's the, you can transcend time and space just by having a sip of this. Yeah.
And I'd love to hear about your story, your journey. You've heard a lot about my background with tea, or at least Alicia Lynn's thing with tea, but I'd really love to hear, you're obviously super passionate, and despite being from different worlds, we're talking about the same thing.
Same thing. Yep.
So I'd love to hear your journey and how you got to where you are.
I grew up in Minnesota, moved to a mountain town when I was 21, and I was shooting. I didn't even like whiskey. I remember shooting it and just being like, wow, what was I? I wasn't a big drinker. I was drinking, mainly beer, and didn't have like a passion for any style of beer. This is in the early 2000s, and so the whole beer scene just kind of started taking off in the 90s. But doing shots of Rumpelmints and Jägermeister in a mountain town, and beer, that was what you drank.
Right.
And then you had that one old friend that was doing shots of Jim Beam. Like, I'll do one with you. Like, oh God, that's terrible. I don't know. Something changed. My palate, I feel like, changed in general. I started working at 5-star restaurants and things like that, and opening up to more strange, out of this world foods and things like that. And literally, my palate started to change. Got into wine. Then my dad started making beer.
Oh, cool.
That started the conversation. That's pretty much where it started. He started making beer, and then the conversation went from that to, I wonder how hard whiskey is to make. And I started making whiskey at the house shortly after that.
Really?
Yeah.
You made a still.
Yeah, I bought a still. Okay. I probably could have done a better job of making a still, not knowing anything about it.
No judgment. I'm impressed.
It was terrible. But I was able to make it work and put it back together, and then. But yeah, I've always had a passion for cooking. My dad cooked, my grandparents cooked, so it all kind of fell into place as cooking. It started off with, just a passion for flavors, right? Yeah. And so started cooking whiskey at the house. Loved the smell of it, the yeast. It has this bready smell to it, right? Which takes you back. Everybody knows
it really does.
Homemade bread. Yeah. And so that kind of, I guess, hooked me, right? Is the smells of what was going on. And then the cooking process, the copper pots and the waiting factor, that another hook. Everything has to be just right. Too hot, you're going to boil over. Not hot enough, you're going to be sitting there for a while. Chemistry of the biology, everything. So a lot of little hooks. And then a distillery in Park City popped up called High West. By that time, I had several years making whiskey at the house for friends and family. It was never selling it. But nonetheless, it was still moonshine, because you're not supposed to produce.
What?
I think I'm past the statute of limitations now. This was many years ago.
You can plead the fifth. This is entertainment purposes only, right here.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so started talked to the head distiller over there. He liked what I had to say. Got a job making whiskey for High West, and that's where I kind of honed in on the practice.
Cool.
And ever since then, just got deeper and deeper into tasting whiskey and knowing what I like, what I want. And just like cooking, you have something, you almost want to replicate it, but you want to make it your own. I try not to be too influenced by too many things, but it's hard when there's so much good, so many good things out there.
Absolutely.
And they're very similar, right? So everything is very similar, but when you start to hone in on your palate, no, they're not.
Absolutely.
Right. You can discern a rye whiskey from a bourbon. You can discern several bourbons, even though they're the same rye, same mash bill. Yeah. You can discern companies. Since then, moved to Austin 10 years ago. Got a job over at Real Spirits as their head distiller when they started making whiskey. So I helped them build their program, making whiskey from their beer styles minus the hops.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Yes.
So
So the mash is what they would use. This the same stuff they'd use to make the beer.
So when we go back to the definition of whiskey, distilled from grain,
right?
That means that all whiskey starts off as beer.
Makes sense.
Because all beer is distilled or is brewed
from grains.
Right, fermented grains. Now the only difference between a brewer's beer and a distiller's beer is that there's no hops in the process. Right. And so I'm more of a purist. There's some distilleries out there that distill the full beer with the hops and everything. I'm not. Yeah.
Have I tried them?
Few. Not few.
The hops tends to come through as almost a resiny type of quality.
If you think about overbrewing a tea, hops go in at a certain time in the boil and then are cut off at 60-minute boils, but they go in at certain times to extract flavors but not extract certain flavors.
Right.
So when you're adding that to now a boiling kettle again and distilling that for 8 hours, those hops were only meant to be in there for maybe 2 minutes in the last 2 minutes of a boil. Now you're boiling them for 8 hours, and it's not going to be a balanced it's an uncontrolled balance.
I'm wondering if I've tried any. I didn't know that hops were ever involved with whiskey production.
What distilleries?
I'm not
Corsair.
yes.
They were like the first ones.
They did a quinoa distillation.
We had that quinoa at the tour.
Right.
Did we have any of these hoppy ones?
We didn't have a hoppy one, no.
Yeah, and Corsair, they make, I don't know, 500 different styles of whiskey. Some of them have hops in them. You may have had one that had hops in it, but it's pretty rare.
Okay.
Again, I'm kind of more of a purist. All the brewers have to do is take that step out of the process and just give me a clear beer minus the hops, a hop addition, and then I'm distilling that. After the distillation, all whiskey, all distilled spirits comes off clear. You'll put that into a barrel, and that's where whiskey and any aged spirit is getting 100% of its flavor.
And color.
100% of its color, not 100% of its flavor, but anywhere, if it's a new charred white oak, anywhere between 70 and 90% of its flavor from that barrel.
Right.
But yeah, 100% of the color is coming from the barrel itself. So whether you're distilling rum, tequila, brandy, whiskey, it all starts off as a clear spirit.
Unless they're adding color. Because they do add color in Scotland.
Like Fireball, probably.
Right, yeah.
And some rums.
And rums, rums, it's very common. But that's been practiced since the beginning of rum, too. They'll make syrups. They've been making syrups from rock candy from way back in the day. Right. They'll add coloring that they derive themselves at the distillery.
Caramel.
250 years ago they've been doing this way. So it's almost like an exceptional thing because it's been tradition for years.
Okay, if that's what it is, that's great. I don't want like red 40
right.
or
I don't
whatever.
think they have red 40 back in the 1500s.
If they
first
could be
distillation in France
or whatever, that's fine. I just don't want like petroleum products in my freaking rum or whatever.
Well, that's where the controversy starts as well. Is when people start adulterating things. It goes back to the Austrian wine industry where they were putting glyphosate into the wines. They were trying to get more a slicker mouthfeel, but they're also doing that in some spirits where they're putting in all of these different
glycerins and things like that.
Glycerin, things like that are going to change how smooth it's perceived on the palate.
Wow. And that's terrible.
So that's where geographical indicators and legislation like bourbon, you can't do that in a bourbon.
Right.
So there are a lot of places out there that are trying to find more regulations or more categories, which one of the categories that we've been working in is the American single malt category. And what is that, and how do we define that, and how do we still get to experiment and play in that playing field without losing all of the craft that's behind it.
Right.
And the way that there's different ways to add flavor with your barrel characteristics. So one of my favorite things is about the distillation process is not just the distillation, but it's the maturation. It's the aging of the spirits, picking the wood, picking the char of the wood, the toast of the wood. All of these cooperages can actually give you what you would like to see on the other end. And, it's a shot in the dark. Hopefully that is what you're looking for in flavor, but you won't know for here in Texas 2 to 4 years, right? And if it doesn't come to that fruition in 2 years, maybe we let it go longer. But the idea that you can manipulate the flavor of your final whiskey through blending is the other fun part for me. Making several different things. Now, by themselves, they may not be great, or they may be fantastic. Either way, the way that I look at blending and all these different flavors that you can create through the maturation process is much like a painter having several different colors.
That's beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the idea now is to create one single color from all of these colors, one color that is well balanced, that possibly has not ever been seen before, and that you can replicate. That's the hard thing, right? Yeah. And so, to me, blending is much like an artist's palette, and you can use 2 different blends. You can use some Japanese whiskeys are using 16 different whiskeys in their archive. All the same mash bill, but maybe a different barrel, different age, different, all sorts of different things it's endless.
Yeah.
So it's endless fun that you can manipulate your final flavor, and
some of those blends can be like, I think Johnny Walker's like 40, 45 different distilleries.
Right, and that's how they're able to maintain this consistent character, because with the variation that you're naturally going to get from year to year, they can compensate for that because they have such a big palette of different color shades to kind of blend into.
But it's still very hard. You're dealing with 44, and if one of those distilleries drops out, how are we going to make up? Because that was 30% of our final flavor was that distillery, right? And so it's actually more difficult. The blending part is much more difficult than the actual distillation.
Yeah.
Distillation is, as long as your chemistry is right, your heat is right, you're going to come out with a right product.
Cool.
So that aging and that blending that is the art that people forget about.
And unless it's not labeled as a single barrel, it is a blend of some type.
Right.
Yes.
It's been batched and blended for flavor.
Yeah.
So even bourbon, if it's a large quantity or a small quantity, more than a barrel, it's going to be a blend of those barrels.
Yeah. So with the big factory teas, that's what you see is they will be blended, and they're going to be doing the same thing for the same purpose, to maintain this consistent product from year to year to year to year. And when you see a cake of Pu-erh, like a factory cake, it'll have a serial number on it. It'll say 7562, like 8594, whatever. The first two numbers are the year that the recipe was developed.
Okay.
The third number is kind of like the mash bill, so to speak. It's the blend of different mountains and farms and stuff that you're using, and then the last number signifies which factory it is. 2 is the Munghai factory, 1 is the Kunming factory, etc. And people will seek out like, the 8592 from 2012 was like a really freaking amazing cake. Everyone wants that one cake.
We're talking whiskey again.
But this here is like leaning into the uniqueness and ephemerality of it. These yuan shang tuo, as we call this one, witch's butter, every time we get a yuan shang tuo, we get 5 to 10 kilos of it. That's all that exists, and we give it a different name. We've had Little Fatty, Cloud Cream, Don Cheadle, Baba Yaga, Thang Thang. Like, we give them these silly names because we have to distinguish them, because they're like these single barrels. There's no blending, homogenizing on. They're all very different. They could be from the same year's harvest, sitting right next to each other in the room, one pile and another pile, and they will end up tasting totally different. They get a different name, and that's something you can go either way in tea. When you've got the big scale, industrial scale production, you want that consistency and homogeneity. What we do, since we're like farm direct tea importers, we're really leaning into this. This is this year's one of this tea from this particular farmer, and this will never exist again. He'll make it again next year, but it's not going to taste like this.
What did you bring for us, Davin?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. You want to dig in what I brought? So I've got a couple of different things. The first one we've got is
I like the unlabeled bottle.
It is unlabeled. We just released this this last weekend. This is the Phoenix Rising. It is a 4-year whiskey that's been aged in new charred white oak. It has been finished in French oak. When you start to get past 4 years in Texas, it's very easy for that barrel to impart some heavy tannins and sharp flavors.
Because it's hot?
Because it's hot, yeah. It has everything to do with the climate that we're in.
Sure.
Now, if you are taking care of that barrel and watching it and seeing what it's doing consistently, you can which is great about a small production like we have. I'm able to keep a pretty close eye on a lot of these things. This 4-year is not that sharp or stringent or anything like that, but the idea is that I'm building Phoenix up to be a 5-year whiskey.
Okay.
So this is a third iteration of a 4-part series for the Phoenix Rising.
Got it.
The fourth one will be a 5-year whiskey. The first one was a 2-year, the second one was a 3, this is a 4, the fourth one will be a 5, and then from there on, I make a phoenix every year since the beginning. And the rest of these phoenixes will be 5 years from there on out, which is pretty old for a Texas whiskey.
Got it.
And so the idea of finishing it in a French oak barrel is that if they do start to go a little stringent, which is totally fine, that French oak is actually going to add some another complexity for one, but it definitely softens the spirit to the umpteenth degree. It gives it a nice velvety mouthfeel, and then again, just adds a lot more complexity to that new charred white oak. This one is unlabeled because this is actually cask strength. This doesn't exist outside of this bottle.
That's funny.
So we're sitting at probably around 112 proof on this. The one that is released is 96.
I brought that bottle of Baijiu. Baijiu in China is like 130 proof standard. That's just like what you go to the Baijiu store and
what proof is it?
130.
Oh, it is.
It's very well. There's not a lot of standardization, but it is not uncommon to be able to get 130 proof Baijiu at your vegetable market where you're buying your vegetables in the morning. They age it in ceramic.
Yeah.
And they'll dip like a little dipper in there, and they'll pour it into like literally a Sprite bottle, or like an Evian bottle, someone maybe drank out of this bottle, but they're pouring this 130 proof.
It had to be empty.
Yeah, someone emptied it. They didn't pour it in the trash, but they're pouring it in this, and if you say anything about it, they're like, it's 130 proof. Nothing will survive.
No.
This cannot transmit pathogens.
I just cleaned it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, cheers, sir.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. What an honor to be able to share this with the creator.
Yeah.
Not something that you get to do every day. Well, I don't.
It is sweet on the nose, but it does not.
And I don't want to say anything. I'd like, if you guys call out, flavors. And
it's so rich, and it is very sweet.
Mm-hmm.
The taste, and you said this is what proof? Like 100?
112.
112? Yeah. I know we're not supposed to call whiskey smooth, and people hate that. But for a cask strength whiskey, it's very easy to drink. It doesn't burn like in a painful way. There's the heat, which I like. That's what I'm here for. If I'm drinking whiskey, I want the heat.
Yeah.
And it definitely has a lot of sweet, almost like some kind of caramely, burnt sugar. It's got, it's on the tip of my tongue.
A spicy orange candy.
Yeah, definitely like a almost like a hard candy, like sweetness, like a melted hard candy sort of viscosity. I want to say like black grape skin or something.
Yeah, there is some fruit.
There's that fruitiness. There's a kind of like jammy fruitiness, and then there's just that little whisper of that tannic, like a grape skin level of tannicness to it. What is a French oak barrel?
French oak barrel is literally how many different varieties of oak are there? There's
just a different wood.
Yeah.
But it's still new. It's not been used for wine or anything like that.
This is a new French oak barrel. You have that option of using a used barrel that maybe brandy was aged in. I'm using a new French oak barrel for these finishing because I want them to walk side by side with the American oak as well, but that French oak does have some toasted biscotti kind of flavors to it, right? It has kind of more of a sweet toast flavor to it versus the caramel, the vanilla, the coconut that you get from a new charred white oak. The French oak adds a lot more of those kind of roasty, toasty, slight coffee characteristics to them, but it literally smooths out a lot of the tannins. Whiskeys are great at cask strength. I can appreciate them. Not a lot of people can. I like to send them out as cask strength because it allows the consumer to change it however they want. If you want to add a couple of drops of water, it will literally open up. And those flavors that are on the tip of your tongue are all of a sudden there. It's cherry.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a grape. It's cherry. That's what it, right?
So here, I'm down to do it. I got some water here.
Just adding just a few drops of water, it will change.
Will you do the honors?
Consistently change.
Just a drop.
Yeah, because it doesn't take much, and it'll change it completely. And if you add too much, you've lost it.
I was getting toast and honey and marmalade and cinnamon on the finish.
Beautiful.
Oh.
Right. And that's the thing is just a few drops, give it a swirl, and let that kind of mix in with itself.
It's a little dustier.
Spicier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting more vanilla, almost like a butterscotch.
Yeah.
Like a custardy, vanilla-y.
Oh, it woke up the spicing.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, and the mouthfeel changes as
Yeah, it
well.
did.
Right? It's a little bit more velvety, right? It's a little bit more softer on the tongue. Obviously, with less alcohol.
Nice.
So this is released at 90. What we felt was a great, just to release it at 98. But like I said, some of the other whiskeys that I like to put out is just for that reason, for you to change it however you want. Otherwise, you'd never know. So this was 112. You had a couple of drops. Now it's it's 98, right? You had a few more drops. You can bring it down to 90, and it's just going to consistently change. You throw it a large ice cube in there, and your lowball is now just going to continuously, every sip is going to be a different sip for you. That's the idea behind the cask strength.
I prefer to have the option.
Exactly.
That's how I feel.
Right.
Personally.
And some people just love drinking cask strength just in general.
Yeah.
That's how they want it.
I like it. I honestly do enjoy cask strength whiskey because it's like drinking Baijiu in China. Because that's
it reminds you of something that that's relatable. There's something relatable to it. And so
one of the things with the distillation process, most people think distillation is a concentration of flavors, but when you're distilling and tasting the product through the still as it's distilling, you find these oils that end up going through the process. And in the glass, those oils are what create those legs that are on the side, but it also is what creates that spreading warmth and the mouthfeel.
And the lingering. So as you're drinking whiskey, if it doesn't have those oils, if they've been stripped out, if it's gone through a process of filtration, you will taste it and then it will be gone.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have heavier oiled whiskey, a distillation process that allows that oils to come through, which is pot distillation as opposed to column distillation. The column is continually distilling things out.
Right.
So pot distillation allows a lot more oils to hang on, which then obviously there's oil in there. It coats the mouth.
Yeah.
And as the drink actually goes back, your tongue is now coated and it allows oxygen to pass by and change that flavor again for you, letting it open up and opening up different flavors, allowing you to taste all the different nuances in there as opposed to just fleeting flavor.
Cool.
So that's the linger is what we call that.
Cool. I want to do a little thing, which is that, when we taste a tea, we're thinking about the taste and the smell, and we're really tuning into the way it feels in our body. And that's the chi, like we were talking about. And so, when we name a tea, we're thinking more about the chi than we are the taste a lot of the time. For me, the chi of this whiskey, so to speak, is it feels very like grounding. It feels like it's bringing me into my body. It's got this kind of heart-opening quality. It makes me feel very kind of a little bit like sentimental, maybe. And part of that's you're here and you've got the story and you've got the passion behind it, and so I'm being able to get that glimpse. But that factually does enhance my experience.
Yes.
Like that, whether placebo or not or whatever, however we want to consider that, whether or not that's like purely inherent to the whiskey or not, it's inherent to the whiskey for me now forever. If I ever drink this whiskey again, this is where it's going to take me to this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing is why you're selfishly trying to taste everybody that you can so that you can give the story the right proper way as opposed to it being botched by somebody who doesn't know obviously didn't make it right. They're not going to have the same, even they could be repeating word for word everything that I'm saying,
right,
but you may not get that same feeling because it's not behind the words.
Right. The chi isn't there. The chi
I totally get it. I love it. I know we're kind of short on time, but I wanted to get into another spirit that I brought.
Yeah.
And it's pretty special, not just to me, but I think to, just people who drink it in general. There is a little ritual behind it. There's a story of how it's made, and it is distilled very differently. So Totem. Basically, what Totem is
a weird animal.
It's a weird animal. Yeah. So as I was talking about earlier, my palate started to change. I started to kind of really appreciate different spirits, whiskey. Then I started drinking mezcal to a mezcal bar in Baltimore for ADI one year. One of my friends introduced me to one of their friends who owned a mezcal bar there, Bar Clavel. If you haven't been there, go there. It's amazing. And that's where I was introduced to, I knew what mezcal was and loved it. Always loved mezcal. The owner there introduced me to pechuga, which is mezcal that is distilled with nuts, fruits, berries, botanicals from around the area of the distillery, along with one of the main ingredients is protein. Typically the breast of a turkey.
Whoa.
Chicken.
Hold up.
In the distillation. Yeah, that's exactly my reaction. That's exactly what I said. I was like,
call
are
it
you
the spirit animal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So pechuga, meaning breast in Spanish, typically when this was first documented, I think it was like the 1940s, pechuga was started being documented. Mezcal is made from agave spirits. That's the base of the spirit is fermented agave. Pechuga is that distillation again, they just collect nuts, fruits, berries, botanicals from around their area, and they use the protein in the distillation. So what's going on is that the process is hanging the protein above the boiling liquid in the pot, so it sits up there raw. The boiling liquid steams, cooks the meat. The meat then renders down into the boil, which then starts to vaporize in with the spirit and come across along with all those flavors of the botanicals that were put in there. Typically fruit, apples, nuts, berries, things like that. So it's like a gin minus the juniper. The main component of gin is juniper. So
meat.
But yeah, so there's no pine needle taste to it. It's smoky, just like mezcal. But the meat rendering coming across, it doesn't have that flavor of whatever meat is being utilized. So different distilleries will use different proteins. One, again, turkey. One will use chicken. Another one will use brisket from a cow. Another one will use iguana. Rabbits have been used. It just depends on what distillery is making it.
I love that.
It's distilled once a year during Dias de Muertos in Oaxaca. And so those distilleries will make one distillation a year, and they will celebrate Dias de Muertos or quinceañeras, weddings. It'll be brought out during special occasions, but on Dias de Muertos, the distillation from last year will be brought out and drank while they distill this year's, and then this year's will be aged for a year in carboys, right? Glass carboys.
Glass, okay.
Yeah. It's a very special spirit. Mezcal is the Oaxacan people's national spirit. I never set out to take anything from the Oaxacan people. What I did do is I adopted the distillation practice. So this is not an agave spirit. This is not made from mezcal or, any agave. What I did do is I wanted to make it something different. I didn't want it just to be made from grain. It is made from wheat and barley, but it's also made with passion fruit. And that passion fruit and grain is all put into the fermentation vessel at the same time and fermented together. So that's one thing that makes it different as well, is that the final distillation ends up being a hybrid whiskey brandy, which nobody's really doing that.
Now, I've been following Davin on his social media. And there's something special about the protein this year as well.
Is it humans?
It's not human. It's not human.
I'm waiting for it. Okay. What is it? Because I'll drink it.
Typically, well, it's always the same animal. I use the ham of a hog that I hunt every year.
Love that.
So the botanicals that go into it, I go out and try to source and forage myself from around the Texas Hill Country. So there's peaches from Fredericksburg, which it's just down the road from Blanco. There's dewberries that I literally pick. On a good season, I pick from our distillery. There's actually wild dewberries there. Other times I've had to go source from a great place. Otherwise, then pecans from the river valleys here, rosemary out of my garden, lavender from Blanco. Bottle brush is the one out factor that not many people. We're the only distillery that uses the leaves of the bottle brush in our gin. Amazing. And in Totem. It's kind of our signature botanical. And then I smoke my own chilies to give it kind of a smoky, spicy characteristic. Lemon, grapefruit, orange peel from the Rio Grande Valley. So those are the botanicals that are in there. And then that hog that I hunt every year, the ham of that hog goes in. So this is wild hog is the protein that I use. Yeah, this year, like Richard was saying, was a little special because hogs are such a big problem on ranches here in Texas. You try to take out as many as you can. And the rancher really wanted me to, obviously it's always the first thing, like get as many as you can. Well, I have a bolt action rifle that I use. You're only going to get one shot before they just scatter. So I did have 2 pigs come in at the same time, and several deer, and I basically had to wait for the deer to be out of the way and for the 2 pigs to line up.
You killed 2 pigs
and
with one bullet.
Yeah, I was able to, it was like I waited 35 minutes and they lined up a few different times, but there was a deer in front or a deer behind. And so finally, after, waiting 35 minutes, their heads finally lined up and I was able to get 2 hogs with 1 shot and helping out that rancher. And they were the only 2 pigs that came in. So amazing. I did good by him, did good by the spirit. I say good by the spirit because I did create a ritual behind this. Pechuga is typically drank during, celebrations for good luck, prosperity, right? And I wanted to pay it the same respect with this. This is pretty much a reflection of myself in a bottle. So being a distiller, being an outdoorsman, the ritual that I created for this leads into good luck and prosperity in any outdoors adventure or anything that you might have going on, right? And so there's a lot of chi in this bottle.
Absolutely. This has crossed the line into frank witchcraft. But I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for it. Absolutely.
Right. So yeah, we'll do the ritual. We'll do the ritual here. But basically, the ritual is we're going to these cups. I actually designed these cups with a gal over at Tina over at Brave Ceramics. What we're gonna do is we're gonna pour the spirit in. But you don't need much. It is 110 proof.
Great.
The reason it's 110 proof is that we're going to light it on fire.
Hell yeah.
The lids you're going to see they kind of play a double duty in this. Typically you're drinking mezcal out of copitas. That's what these are, short glasses. These actually work really great because they're short enough to where it's easier to light and you don't need much for the ritual in general. But these lids have a little lip where the honey is going to be placed. And you'll see why. But basically, the honey plays a part in the fact that if you're having your adventures, say you're going on a mountain biking, hiking trip here in Texas, you're covered. There's a lot of Texas already in here. I said Fredericksburg peaches, lavender, dewberries. The hog is from Texas. You're covered.
Absolutely.
But say you're having a whitewater rafting trip in Idaho. There's nothing in Idaho in this bottle. There's nothing that connects this spirit to Idaho to you. So wherever you're going to have your experience, whatever the experience is, you're going to go get a local honey. Bees are all over the world. There's a local honey no matter where, pretty much no matter where you go, unless you're in Antarctica. But you can get a local honey in Nepal.
You use Creole if you're in Antarctica, you know.
But the idea is to get a local honey. So that way, when you drink, what you're going to do is we're going to light the spirit on fire. And I'm going to hand this to you. And then you're going to put it out by putting the lid right on top of it. There we go. More. So take that lid. And don't let it sit too long. Go ahead and just put it out because that will.
Richard.
Right?
Get it. Hell yes. This is way cooler than I thought it was going to be. I was expecting to be really cool. I was really excited about this, but I had no idea we were going to be doing all this stuff.
So the idea is the bees did all the foraging for you from that area. So the honey is what connects you to the spirit, to the land, to produce good luck and prosperity in that adventure. And the lid helps deliver the honey to the rim, puts out the fire. The fire is awakening the spirit, allowing it to basically letting it know that you're about to partake in the ritual. And again, the honey, you're going to lick the honey, drink the spirit, and the honey is what binds you to the spirit, to the land, to have good luck and prosperity.
Wow. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. So lick the honey and then drink it. Wow.
That is a lot going on.
And it's nothing that you've really tasted, experienced on your palate before. You're going to have some similar flavors coming through, but for the most part, that blend of flavor is pretty unique.
Yeah, floral and
And then you can feel where it's at. It's almost like a weight coming down, and once it hits about here, that's when you start to feel it disperse
Madud
around.
in Chinese, that's called Tigan.
Tigan.
Body feel.
Yes.
We talk about that for tea.
Okay, so I'm not just crazy. When you feel it hit here, it starts to separate.
I feel it. I definitely feel it. The expansion. I feel that expansive. I feel like a clarity. I feel like a tension, presence, clarity. I feel movement. I feel like a whole lot of like forward movement. I almost hear sounds. I feel like I hear the sound of the forest. I feel like I hear the sound of the birds and the bugs where these pigs were living their lives, where these pecans were. Yeah, that's amazing. And I've never had anything like that. This is so beautiful that you created this. This is magic. It's real magic. So thank you so much.
I mean, it's hard to say, here, like, it's hard to think about, like, where does magic come from? Do you just create it? Like,
Yes.
you literally can. I have no problem saying that, like, because it's whatever you feel.
That's right.
Everything that you explained you explain it a lot easier than what I'm able to explain it to other people with. I basically have to have you go through the process, right? And that's exactly how it should be.
Beautiful. Man, I was worried I was going to I don't know if Noah's chi talks to me too spooky for this whiskey guy. But he's giving me ham leg, ham liquor, that he killed the pigs, 2 pigs with 1 shot. Is this going to make me invisible?
Where'd you go?
Am I impervious to bullets now?
No, do not.
Because I feel like I am.
Adventure responsibly, please.
Wow, amazing, dude.
Yeah.
That's so freaking cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
That is unbelievable. So you can go buy this in a store?
You can, a few stores. Total Wine, they pulled it, they wanted it a few years ago. Not many, again, unless you've talked with me or sat down with me, it's just this sitting on a shelf, and they put it in the wrong section. This was never meant to be taken as a mezcal.
Right.
It was influenced by a mezcal product called pechuga.
Right.
And this is still.
It doesn't taste like mezcal at all.
It's still considered a pechuga because it's made for the distillation practice.
Because you put the meat in the distillation.
But it is not a mezcal. And that is not something that I set out to do. But when I explained the process of it, the person who, our distributor, interpreted that as it's a mezcal, marked it as a mezcal, and now it is on the shelf, which I hate, as a mezcal.
Well, anyone watching this podcast now has had the chance to sit down and talk to you about this, and they can, the market doesn't have the capacity for nuance, but luckily that's why podcasts are good, being able to reach people. And you make this every year?
Once a year. I get about 300 bottles a year. 300.
Nice.
Yep.
Good thing you got 2 pigs this year.
But I got 2 pigs this year. Yeah. Well, I still only make 1 batch because it's the amount of fruit and everything that I'm collecting, foraging it's pretty. That's done throughout the entire year. So like dewberries are coming up in the spring. I don't distill this until I have everything, which grapefruit, I can get for the most part most of the year, but like winter is the grapefruit season, spring is dewberries,
peaches in the summer.
Peaches are in the summer.
Yeah.
So I have to basically start collecting from the spring on to the distillation, which ends up happening in July, August, and then the hunting happens anywhere between that last distillation and the next one. The other thing that I do is on distillation day, and you guys are more than welcome. This is industry friends.
There you go.
I do a little celebration on distillation day. The distillation will start. Then what I've been doing the last 3-4 years is taking the other portions of that hog and then cooking them. What I do is I slow smoke them into a carnitas.
Oh.
Then at the end of the distillation, that's when I'll invite people over as a timing thing. About 4:30, the distillation should be over. The rest of the hog has been slow roasting. I've got all the things ready to go. The end of the distillation happens. I take that ham of the hog out, and then I mix that in with the carnitas.
Oh, dang. So you've got the ethanol steamed hog mixed in with the carnitas from the rest of the hog.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's really free. I want to be. When do you do that?
Yeah. So that'll be like August, July, August. Probably.
My birthday's
usually
July.
August.
Okay. Well, please do let me know.
Yeah, I will.
I'd love to be there. That's amazing.
It's usually, like I said, just a small gathering of friends, industry. You guys are definitely in that category of both friends and industry. But I'll let you all know when that goes down. But the hog itself, when it comes out of the distillate, it's inedible.
Sure.
It's laden with ethanol,
Yeah.
like you said, it really is. And so the idea is to cook a lot of the other hog that balances that out, because when you mix that in, you definitely can. It's very edible.
Right.
It's actually,
I'm sure it cooks
again,
off.
blending these flavors in with each other, it becomes very edible. And I've done Pu-erh tacos with it. Usually, the last 3 years I've done Pu-erh tacos, but yeah, the opportunity to try the hog that was used in it.
Well, you also do fishing tours and hunting tours.
That's, again, the reflection of myself in a bottle. Being an outdoorsman, I guide fly fishing and hunting trips. Met my wife on the river. We were both river guides. So the outdoors is a very big deal to me.
Amazing.
How do people find you?
They can find me through, the best way is really literally through Instagram. Davin Whiskey River Chronicle is my handle. You'll find a lot of spirits. You'll find a lot of cocktails. You'll find a lot of cooking.
Well, dude, this is way beyond what I expected to be doing this evening. I was excited to drink some whiskey. I always love meeting distillers and meeting people who are passionate about their craft. But this goes far beyond. This is obviously a labor of love and a spiritual overture, and like much more than a product. So I'm very honored to be able to share this with you.
Well, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be bringing friends on, talking with Sohan, and learning a little bit more about other people in the spirits industry, spirits lovers, people who enjoy tea and craft, and this is how Whiskey Provisioner is going to proceed.
All right, and we're here at West China Tea. We're drinking West China Tea, and I'm Sohan, and thank you so much, Davin. Such a pleasure meeting you. You're always welcome here. Literally, seriously, come by whenever. You got family, bring your friends. We'd love to hang out with you, and we got a great community here, and they'd love to meet you too. I know a lot of whiskey fans in our community who would be freaking thrilled just to hear you talk about this stuff. So please do come hang out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll definitely plan on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Cool. Nice.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.